Pottsgrove High School Library's main purposes are to entice students to read. Reading is important. Are you interested in reading about math and science? Read Edwin A. Abbott's Flatland. Classic of science and mathematical fiction, Flatland is charmingly illustrated by its author and describes the journeys of A Square and his adventures in Spaceland, Lineland, and Pointland. A Square also entertains thoughts of visiting a land of 4 dimensions, a revolutionary idea for which he is banned from Spaceland. Have you read Mitch Albom's The 5 People You Meet in Heaven? The main character is Eddie, a wounded war veteran, an old man who has lived an uninspired life. His job is fixing rides at a seaside amusement park. But on his 83rd birthday, a tragic accident kills him as he tries to save a little girl from a falling cart. He awakens in the afterlife, where he learns that heaven is not a destination. It's a place where your life is explained to you by 5 people. Some of whom you know, others who may have been strangers. But one by one, from childhood to soldier to old age, Eddie's 5 people revisit their connections to him on Earth, illuminating the mysteries of his so-called meaningless life and revealing the haunted secret behind the eternal question, why are we here? In Sherman Alexie's The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, Arnold Spirit Jr. was born with an excess of spinal fluid in his skull. The brain damage that resulted in the surgery he underwent to correct it left him skinny, with less teeth, an oversized head, hands, and feet, not to mention poor eyesight, seizures, stutters, and lisps. Because of this, Arnold is regularly beaten up and given such nicknames as Retard and Globe. Due to words like this and a small part referencing masturbation in the book, I have to warn you that cities in the United States of America have banned this book and taken it off their library shelves. This young adult novel was released in 2007 and received immediate acclaim. It won the 2007 National Book Award and the 2009 Odyssey Award for Best Audio Book. This is a story of a boy struggling with the decision to leave everything he knows behind in pursuit of a decent education. This is a story celebrating a love of learning and the struggle that we all face between making others happy and finding a life worth living. Are you ready to read a disturbing book about eating disorders and anorexia? Laurie Halse Anderson's Winter Girls is your book. Leah and Cassie are best friends, winter girls frozen in fragile bodies, competitors in a deadly contest against each other to see who can be the thinnest. But then Cassie suffers the ultimate loss, her life, and Leah is left behind, haunted by her friend's memory and racked with guilt for not being able to help save her. Ready for an intense page-turner? Read Swati Avasti's Split. 16-year-old Jace Witherspoon arrives at the doorstep of his estranged brother Christian with a re-landscaped face, courtesy of his father's fist. He has $3.84 in his pocket and a secret. He tries to move forward. He tries to find new friends, a new school, a new job, but all these changes can't make him forget what he's left behind. His mother, who is still trapped with his dad, and his ex-girlfriend, who is keeping his secret. Jace realizes that if he really wants to move forward, he may first have to do what scares him most. He may have to go back. This is a book about what you've said after you've said enough, after you've run, after you've made the split. How do you live again? In this powerful novel, Shipbreaker, Paolo Bacigalupi delivers a thrilling, fast-paced adventure. In America's Gulf Coast region, grounded oil tankers are being broken down for parts by crews of young people. Naylor, a teenage boy, works the light crew scavenging for copper wiring just to make quota, and hopefully live to see another day. But when, by luck or by chance, he discovers an exquisite clipper ship beached during a recent hurricane, Naylor faces the most important decision of his life: strip the ship for all it's worth, or rescue its lone survivor, a beautiful and wealthy girl who could lead him to a better life. Looking for a non-fiction read? Read Susan Campbell Bartoletti's They Called Themselves the KKK. 6 restless young men raided the linens at a friend's mansion, pulled pillowcases over their head, hopped on horses, and cavorted through the streets of Pulaski, Tennessee. The 6 friends named their club the Ku Klux Klan, and too quickly their club grew into a self-proclaimed invisible empire with secret dens spread across the South. This is the story of how a secret terrorist group took root in America's democracy. Like sports? Football? Read H.G. Bissinger's Friday Night Lights. This is a timeless account of the Permian Panthers of Odessa, the winningest high school football team in Texas history. Odessa is not known to be a town big on dreams, but the Panthers helped to keep the hopes and dreams of this small, dusty town going. Every Friday night, from September to December, the Permian High School Panthers play football, and this West Texas town becomes a place where dreams can come true. Peter Bognani writes a funny story called The House of Tomorrow. It's about Sebastian Prendergast, who lives with his eccentric grandmother in a geodesic dome. His homeschooling has taught him much, but he's learned little about girls, junk food, or loud, angry music. When fate casts Sebastian out of the dome, he finds a different kind of tutor in Jared Whitcomb, a chain-smoking 16-year-old heart transplant recipient who teaches him the ways of rebellion. Together they form a punk band and plan to take the local church talent show by storm. But when his grandmother calls him back to the futuristic life she has planned for him, he must decide whether to answer the call or start a future of his own. Jennifer Boylan writes a memoir called I'm Looking Through You, Growing Up Haunted. This is an engagingly candid investigation of what it means to be haunted. With creaking stairs, fleeting images in the mirror, and remote whispers of human voices, Jennifer looks back on the spirits who invaded her family home in Pennsylvania. She launches a full investigation with the help of a group of earnest if questionable ghostbusters. She examines the ways we find connections between the people we once were and the people we become. With wit and eloquence, Boylan shows us how love, forgiveness, and humor help us find peace with our ghosts, with our loved ones, with uncanny boundaries, real and imagined, between men and women. Another nonfiction book about the solar system, Mike Brown's How I Killed Pluto and Why It Had It Coming. In 2005, astronomer Mike Brown made the discovery of a lifetime, a 10th planet, Eris, slightly bigger than Pluto. But instead of adding one more planet to our solar system, Brown's find ignited a firestorm of controversy that culminated in the demotion of Pluto from real planet to the newly coined category of dwarf planet. Suddenly, Brown was receiving hate mail from school children, being bombarded by TV reporters, all because his discovery that he spent years searching for and a lifetime dreaming about. Interested in this nonfiction book? Read How I Killed Pluto and Why It Had It Coming. Stephen Chbosky's fiction novel, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, is a story about what it's like to travel that strange course through the uncharted territory of high school. It's a world of first dates, family dramas, and new friends. It's a racy novel filled with sex, drugs, and the Rocky Horror Picture Show, of those wild and poignant roller coaster days known as growing up. Interested in track, running, and Greek mythology? Read Tara Lynn Child's Oh My Gods. When Phoebe's mom returns from Greece with a new husband and plans to move to an island in the Aegean Sea, Phoebe's well-plotted senior year becomes ancient history. Instead of enjoying a triumphant track season and planning for college with her best friends, Phoebe is trying to keep her head above water. It's hard enough being the new kid, but Phoebe's classmates are all descendants of the Greek gods, and when you're running against teammates with superpowers and nursing a crush on a boy who is quite literally a god, the drama takes on mythic proportions. Drugged and kidnapped from her parents at a Bangkok airport, English teen Jenna wakes to find herself in a weirdly beautiful but desolate Australian outback. Her only company is her captor, a handsome young Australian named Ty, who is obsessed with her. Indeed, he tells her that he has been watching her since she was a child and now plans to keep her with him forever. Interested? Read Lucy Christopher's Stolen. My science lovers can read The Greatest Show on Earth. Richard Dawkins sifts through rich layers of scientific evidence, from living examples of natural selection to clues in the fossil record, from natural clocks that mark the vast epochs wherein evolution ran its course, to the intricacies of developing embryos, from plate tectonics to molecular genetics, to make the airtight case that we ourselves are perched on one tiny twig in the midst of a blossoming and flourishing tree of life, and it is no accident, but the direct consequence of evolution by non-random selection. Science lovers, read Richard Dawkins' The Greatest Show on Earth. Everything I Was by Corinne Dimas. So begins Irene's journey from an Upper West Side penthouse to, well, she's not entirely sure where. Irene's father, a corporate VP, is downsized when his company merges with another. When he can't find work, her family's lifestyle, and her mother's spending quickly catches up with them. Eventually, they're forced to move in with Irene's grandfather in the family farmhouse estate. But what begins as the most disastrous summer of Irene's life takes a surprising turn, and Irene must decide what she wants for herself after losing everything she was. Everyone knows about Anne Frank and her life hidden in the secret annex. But what about the boy who was also trapped there with her? In this powerful and gripping novel by Sharon Dogar, she explores what this might have been like from Peter's point of view. What was it like to be forced into hiding with Anne Frank? First to hate her, and then to find yourself falling in love with her. Especially with your parents and her parents all watching almost everything you do together. Read Annexed if you're interested in the Holocaust, the Jewish religion, and liked Anne Frank's diary. Another book about abduction and the bond between a mother and a son. To 5-year-old Jack, room is the world. It's where he was born. It's where he and his ma eat, sleep, play, and learn. At night, his ma shuts him safely in the wardrobe where he is meant to be asleep when old Nick visits. Room is home to Jack, but to Ma, it's the prison where she's been held for 7 years. Through her fierce love for her son, she has created a life for him in this 11 by 11-foot space. But with Jack's curiosity building alongside with her own desperation, she knows that room cannot contain either much longer. Seek not your destiny, for it is seeking you, is the theme in Richard Paul Evans' The Sunflower. In the wake of personal tragedy, two people meet on a humanitarian mission in Peru. Christine is a shy, unadventurous woman whose fiancé broke off the engagement only a week before the wedding. And Paul is a former emergency room doctor whose glamorous lifestyle, stellar reputation, and beautiful fiancé are cruelly snatched from him one fateful snowy Christmas Eve. Deep in the Amazon jungle, against a backdrop of poverty and heartbreak, they must confront their deepest fears and together learn to trust and love again. Do you like reading books that are in a series? The Sphinx's Queen is the sequel to Sphinx's Princess. It's about ancient Egypt, and the author Esther Freisner offers readers a fresh look at an iconic figure, Nefertiti, and blends historical fiction and mythology together. Nefertiti was the great royal wife of the Egyptian pharaoh. Nefertiti and her husband were known for a religious revolution in which they worshiped one god only. Tipping point is that magic moment when an idea, trend, or social behavior crosses a threshold, tips, and spreads like wildfire. Just as a single sick person can start an epidemic of the flu, so too can a small but precisely targeted push cause a fashion trend, the popularity of a new product, or a drop in the crime rate. This widely acclaimed bestseller, in which Malcolm Gladwell explores and brilliantly illuminates the tipping point phenomenon, is already changing the way people throughout the world think about selling products and disseminating ideas. Read this nonfiction book. John Green's The Fault in Our Stars is probably my most favorite book. He created a soulful novel that tackles big subjects, life, death, love, with the perfect blend of levity and heart-swelling emotion. Hazel is 16 with terminal cancer. When she meets Augustus at her Kids with Cancer support group, the two are kindred spirits, sharing an irreverent sense of humor and an immense charm. And watching them fall in love, even as they face universal questions of the human condition. How will I be remembered? Does my life and will my death have meaning? This is one of the best books I ever read and will certainly make you cry. Looking for Alaska is another John Green title. John Green was the winner of the Michael L. Prince Award. This book is about Miles Pudge Halter. He lives a quite uneventful, boring life and has this weird obsession with famous last words. But he's heading off to college, to a boarding school, and his life becomes the opposite of boring and safe, because down the hall is Alaska Young, the gorgeous, clever, funny, sexy, self-destructive, screwed up, and utterly fascinating Alaska Young. She is an event unto herself. She pulls Pudge into her world, launches him into the great perhaps, and steals his heart. Sarah Gruen's novel, Water for Elephants, is way better than the movie. It's a historical fiction novel about Jacob Jankowski's 90-something-year-old mind. He has memories of himself as a young man, tossed by fate onto a rickety train that was home to the Benzini brothers' most spectacular show on earth. His memories are of a world filled with freaks and clowns, with wonder and pain and anger and passion. A world with its own narrow, irrational rules, its own way of life, and its own way of death. The world of the circus. To Jacob, it was both salvation and a living hell. This novel actually made me like historical fiction. Mark Haydon's novel, The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, is fascinating in that the narrator is autistic, hence the upside-down dog on the front cover, the way an autistic child or teenager may see life. This is a murder mystery told by 15-year-old Christopher, who's not only autistic, he's mathematically gifted and socially hopeless. Late one night, Christopher comes across his neighbor's poodle, Wellington, impaled on a garden fork. Wellington's owners find Christopher cradling their dead dog in his arms and actually has him arrested. Christopher had nothing to do with the murder. Therefore, he starts investigating Sherlock Holmes style. Meredith and Nina Whitson are as different as sisters can be. One stayed at home to raise her children and manage the family apple orchard. The other followed a dream and traveled the world to become a famous photojournalist. But when their beloved father falls ill, the girls find themselves together again, standing alongside their cold, disapproving mother, who even now offers no comfort to her daughters. As children, the only connection between them was a Russian fairy tale, sometimes told to the girls at night. But on his deathbed, their father extracts a promise from the women in his life that the fairy tale will be told one last time and all the way to the end. To find out more, read Kristen Hanna's Winter Garden. I placed 2 Khalid Hosseini's books on the summer reading list. You have A Kite Runner and A Thousand Splendid Suns. Both are propelled by the same superb instinct for storytelling and chronicles Afghan history and tells stories of family, friendship, faith, and salvation. These stories are both passionate searches for family, home, acceptance, a healthy society, and a promising future regardless of the obstacles. These 2 books are must-reads. The Secret Life of Bees is a pretty deep novel. Lily has grown up believing she accidentally killed her mother when she was 4. She not only has her own memory of holding the gun, but her father's account of the event. Now 14, she yearns for her mother and for forgiveness. She lives on a peach farm in South Carolina with her father, and her only friend is a black servant. In South Carolina in the 60s, where segregation is still considered a cause worth fighting for. This book is chock full of one girl's journey to find peace. I decided to add some short stories to our summer reading list, So, if you're ready to enter a nightmarish mindscape of unrelenting horror and shocking revelations that could only come from the imagination of the greatest storyteller of all time, read The 14 Tales of Stephen King, Everything's Eventual. Why would an educated young man from a well-to-do family give $25,000 to charity, abandon his car and most of his possessions, burn all the cash in his wallet, and decide to invent a new life for himself? Well, Christopher McCandless decided to do just that. He hitchhiked to Alaska, walked alone into the wilderness, and 4 months later, his decomposed body was found. Find out more. Read John Krakauer's Into the Wild. When Kimberly Chang and her mother immigrate from Hong Kong to Brooklyn squalor, she begins a secret double life. Exceptional schoolgirl by day, Chinatown sweatshop worker in the evenings. Disguising the more difficult truths of her life, like the staggering degree of her poverty, the weight of her family's future resting on her shoulders, or her secret love for a factory boy who shares none of her talent or ambition, Kimberly learns to constantly translate not just her language, but also herself. Want to read a book about the CIA, the KGB, espionage, a life of terror and explosive violence? In this book, Robert Ludlum's The Matterese Circle, it's about sworn enemies that have vowed to terminate each other, yet now they must become allies. Because only they possess the brutal skills and ice-cold nerves vital to destroy an international circle of killers, the Matterese. Imagine an alternate universe where tinkerers and dreamers craft and recraft a world of automatons, clockworks, calculating machines, and other marvels that never were. Steampunk, an anthology of fantastically rich and strange stories, is another short story group which defies the steampunk genre. 4 U.S. Navy SEALs departed one clear night in early July 2005 for the mountainous Afghani-Pakistan border for a reconnaissance mission. Their task was to document the activity of an al-Qaeda leader rumored to be very close to bin Laden, with just a small army and a Taliban stronghold. 5 days later, only one of those Navy SEALs made it out alive. Read Marcus Luttrell's Lone Survivor, eyewitness account of Operation Red Wing and the Lost Heroes of SEAL Team 10. David McCullough's 1776 tells the intensely human story of those who marched with General George Washington in the year of the Declaration of Independence, when the whole American cause was riding on their success, without which all hope for independence would have been dashed, and the noble ideals of the Declaration would have amounted to little more than words on paper. Read this non-fiction book. The Apothecary is a suspenseful book about the kidnapping of a pharmacist and his 2 children trying to save him and locate the sacred book in order to find him while keeping it out of the hands of other spies. Wing Shooters is a novel that examines the effects of change in a small, isolated town, the strengths and limits of community, and the sometimes conflicting loyalties of family and justice. Set in the expansive countryside of central Wisconsin against the backdrop of Vietnam and the post-civil rights era, Wing Shooters explores both connection and loss, as well as the complex but enduring bonds of family. In The Pregnancy Project, Gabby details how she was able to fake her own pregnancy, hiding the truth from even her siblings and boyfriend's parents, and reveals all that she learned from that experience. But more than that, Gabby's story is about fighting stereotypes and how one girl found the strength to come out of the shadow of low expectations to forge a bright future for herself. Set in Calcutta in the 1930s, the Midnight Palace begins on a dark night when an English lieutenant fights to save newborn twins Ben and Cherie from an unthinkable threat. Despite monsoon-force rains and terrible danger lurking around every street corner, the young lieutenant manages to get them to safety, but not without losing his own life.